Hey everyone, and welcome to another NHL edition of Grinderslive. I'm your host, Nhl MT, and today we're going to be going through a massive 14-game slate. Joining me today is Tasteful Tides. Tim, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Taylor? It's great to finally work with you.
Yeah, it's been a while. When I looked at the schedule, I was like, all right, it's finally time. We've both done a lot of these, but not together, so should be a good time today. Before we get into it, there's a Grinders Live contest on YouTube. So head over there, hit the like button, and leave your prediction for the highest scoring skater tonight, as well as their score. Presumably that's DK scoring. I'll just go ahead and make that clear now. So put the highest score and the DK score. The winner will get a free week of RG Premium, the combo package. So head over there now and do that. Also check out scoresandodds.com. This is a really easy one to plug today because Tim here with me hit a plus 900 single game parlay in MLB last night. All kinds of other great content over there from MLB, NHL, NBA, PGA, you name it. So head over there, everything you need, expert picks, analysis tools, everything you need to make you a better sports better. All right, we're not going to waste too much time giving a slate overview just due to the pure number of games. So we will just hop right into it. First game we have is the Blues traveling to Boston to take on the Bruins. Only newsworthy note for the Blues is that Torrey Krug will be back in the lineup tonight, likely slotting into the number one power play. Obviously a tough matchup here. Anything you like on the Blues traveling into Boston?
No, not really, Taylor. I think the only two possible little two-man stack I might do is maybe a Brandon Saad and a Ryan O'Reilly, but I think that's really a stretch. Even if I was making 20 teams tonight, they would be a pretty quick cross off for me.
Yeah, I think I'm largely with you there. It'll be interesting to see how the Bruins do match up because lately it seems like the Thomas, Tarasenko, Buchnevich line has been kind of their 1B line and arguably more productive. So I'm kind of curious how they'll match up with the Bergeron line there. But I agree on a slate this large. I don't think you can make them a priority.
They are expensive tonight. They didn't really get a big time price decrease going up against the Bruins, which makes me kind of want to stay away.
Yeah, I completely agree. What about on the Bruins side? Do you have any more interest there?
Yeah, I do have a little bit of interest in Boston one. I don't know. They're not going to be that high owned. And I think that the Blues kind of are overrated defensively. I think people still think it's the Blues from a couple of years ago when they're just not that same team anymore. So, I mean, I think in tournaments, you certainly could do Boston one stack. You could certainly add in Taylor Hall as cheap exposure to the first power play unit. If you need a punt on the blue line, I think Mike Riley is viable if you need somebody in that $2,500 range on DK.
Yeah, I was going to mention it looks like Lindholm and Grzelcyk will both be out. So I agree They're going to be a little thinner on the blue line, bringing into play, like you mentioned, or Carlo for someone who's, maybe he'll get you 3 block shots in the bonus or something. I think you could do worse there. Only other name, I know you mentioned Boston one. Jake DeBrusk, still really cheap. They refuse to move his price. I think he's $4,000 on DK. He seems to be on and off the first power play. Last I looked, he was on there. I think he and Charlie Coyle seem to be kind of swapping in and out there. So if I were playing a one-off, DeBrusk, like you said, Boston one is solid and should have pretty low ownership. All right. Moving on, I think this will be one of the more popular games, especially one side of it tonight. We have the Sabres taking on the Maple Leafs. Toronto is a minus 475 favorite with a 7-goal total, which if you're trying to do some quick math, that means we have a 5-goal team total for the Maple Leafs, which I don't remember seeing this year. There may have been one other, and it probably involved either the Oilers or the Maple Leafs. But before we go to Toronto, where there will obviously be interest, Sabres, anything worthwhile on the Buffalo side of things?
I mean, Toronto does bleed goals at times. So I think that you could make the argument you could play an Alex Tuch or a Tage Thompson. I wouldn't get too crazy with it, but I think that they're worth being part of your GPP pool because they'll play their minutes. Toronto has just been very leaky defensively. So I think that they could be a part of your pool. I mean, I'm just a single entry player, so they won't be on my team, but I think they'd be worth a look if you were 20 maxing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had written down. One, I think this line is a little high. I mean, don't get me wrong, they should be huge favorites, but 475. I mean, the Sabres have been playing a little better, especially that top line that you mentioned. So I agree that the Skinner, Thompson, Tuch, absolutely. If you're playing 10, maybe have one lineup. If you're playing 20 or 25, have a few. Because to your point, I mean, this could easily end up being 6-3. And if 2 of those goals come from Buffalo 1, then, they've easily paid off at really low ownership.
And if you're 20 maxing, you put them in 1 and you'll probably be overweight. So,
right.
I mean, you don't have to go crazy in your portfolio with them. But I mean, I do think that they're worth being in the pool.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So flipping it over to Toronto, what do you not like? Is Matthews far and away for you? Kind of break down the Toronto side.
So I'm absolutely going to be playing Matthews tonight. It's kind of just the pieces with him that I'm struggling with. I don't know if I want to pay $8,200 for Mitch Marner. I think maybe I might want to go like a Matthews, Nylander, Tavares and get like a kind of a unique power play 1 type stack. Maybe add in a Jake Muzzin as well. I mean, I'm certainly going to have at least 3 Maple Leafs on my single entry team. That being said, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that because it's Marner's price. I mean, Marner has these games where he just doesn't shoot the puck. And so you're paying an $8,200 for a guy who sometimes just doesn't shoot. And if he doesn't get those 3 assists to Matthews or whatever, he's not going to pay off that $8,200 price tag. So he's kind of the tricky piece for me. I think right now I'm going to leave him off, but that could absolutely end up crushing me.
You nailed it on Marner, and I was going to use the exact same scenario. Like he could easily have 2 assists and 2 shots on goal, and at 8,200 he didn't burn you. But to your point, he can easily have a goal and 3 assists, and end up with 30 DK points. So I agree. He's not a must play. If you want to go with someone else that shoots the puck more and saves you some money, there's nothing wrong with playing Matthews as a one-off. I mean, even though their team total is 5 goals, there's nothing to say that he doesn't have 8 to 10 shots on goal and has a hat trick and no one else really gets there. At least it's going to burn you. So
I would like to be able to play Morgan Riley, but he just doesn't shoot the puck ever either. So it's just, this team can be so tricky when you want to build a stack. And I think really I'm going to go with my first instinct and go Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, and then maybe a Muzzin. And I think that will be what I do because I get exposure to all 3 lines at even strength and I get full correlation on the power play.
Yeah, I like that a lot. All right, let's move on to another huge favorite. We have the Ducks taking on the Panthers. Panthers are similar. They're a 475 favorite, which is the same as Toronto. A little bit less goal total here, but it's still 6.5. So their implied team total is right up there with the Maple Leafs. Same question from before. Anything on the Duck side before we move to the Panthers?
I think probably my 3 favorite Ducks would be Zegras, Grant, and Shattenkirk. And then maybe you could even do like a Sonny Milano at min price who gets first power play run. Obviously you don't want to get too crazy with this Ducks team because the Panthers are going to dominate puck possession like they always do. But what we've seen is that the Panthers, they just like to outscore people. They're not really trying to prevent you from scoring. So they do give up a lot of goals. Bobrovsky is super overrated. Yes, he'll probably get the win, but he's going to give up a couple goals. And the Ducks are priced so low that if you get that random, goal and assist out of your $2,600 guy, or Zegras gets 2 goals, then you're there in GPPs. So I think you could do a couple of these cheap pieces from the Ducks.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar to the Buffalo situation that we just broke down, where people are going to see that they're a massive underdog at plus, 380, 400, whatever they are. And they're going to want to stay away because they see, oh, well, they can't possibly score any goals if they're that big of an underdog. But to your point, both of these teams, the Maple Leafs and the Panthers, can give up goals. I'm with you. I think Zegras and Terry, for me, are probably the two. They're letting them go out there and play 20 plus minutes, which I love. I mean, let them, if your team's not going to be great, let your young players go out there, get better. So I agree. I think you can absolutely, if you're wanting it as part of a game stack, to your point, these Florida games can get out of control sometime. I mean, it seems like every time I look the last week, they're down. Florida's down 4-2 or 4-1 going into the third, and then the final score is 6-5 Florida. So this could absolutely turn into a shootout, and I'm with you on the Ducks at least being sprinkled into your GPP exposure. All right, what about Florida? Huge goal total here, or team total. What do you like most on the Panthers?
So I'm a little bit torn between Florida 1 and Florida 2. I think I have to kind of go with Florida 2, but really you're splitting hairs. Maybe if you're multi-entering, go with whoever you think is going to be lower owned. You're going to want exposure to these top 2 lines. I guarantee you that. So if you're trying to get off some of the Maple Leafs chalk, this is your team. So determining kind of between Florida 1 and Florida 2 in a vacuum, I think I prefer Florida 2. If they're going to be higher owned, maybe I'd pivot to Florida 1. Don't forget about Sammy Reinhart on the third line. He gets first power play exposure. I don't know. Are they going 5 forwards again on the power play?
They seem to rotate back and forth, but for the most part, that's what I've seen. I played Uyghur the other night, and he seemed to, if he had just had a shift, for example, they'd leave him off, or if they were trailing, maybe they would, pull him off. If they're ahead, to leave him on. So it seems to be on and off, but they do like the 5-4 setup.
Yeah. I mean, Anthony Duclair on the first line, he's extremely cheap. I mean, 3,400 on this matchup, getting first power play run. The only issue I have with him is that the minutes have been quite low. So he's really going to have to produce while he's out there because he's just not getting those elite minutes that we want in like the 17 to 20 range. He's getting like the 13 to 15. So, but that's what's preventing me from playing him in my single entry build as much as I'd like to, because that price is really attractive.
Yeah, it is tough for Florida because you've got Barkov centering the first line, but you're right. Neither of his wingers seem to get near the minutes that he does. And then normally they're not, Verhaeghe isn't on the power play. So it's a little difficult to stack up. I think right now, you mentioned Florida too. I think I like the wingers from Florida too, of Huberdeau and Giroux, and then maybe with Barkov for just kind of a power play 1. I think that's where I'll lean. But yeah, all of the top 6 plus Reinhart are absolutely in play. And then we talked about
recording
goalies
in progress.
And then on the Rangers side, yeah, I don't think Freddie Anderson's quite as good a goalie as Shesterkin, but they do often control the tempo. So who's to say the Rangers get 30 shots tonight, and that just limits their upside. So I think we're both largely stay away on this game. If you want to sprinkle individual pieces or target the goalies, go for it. But the 5.5 total paints a pretty clear picture that this is going to be a defensive game.
You need a ceiling tonight. You're going to need a massive score tonight. So these type of games, I just don't think have that.
Yep. All right. Just a reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, definitely go and fill out the like us on YouTube, and then go in and give us your prediction for the highest score of the slate. That's a skater and their projected score. So go do that on YouTube if you haven't already. We're giving away a free week of RG Premium, the combo package. All right. Moving on here, we've got the Flyers traveling to Washington to take on the Capitals. Caps are 265 favorites with a 6-goal over under. For the Flyers, only newsworthy note here, Bobby Brink, I believe, is going to make his debut tonight. I looked on the lines and I saw him on there. I couldn't find definitive news on there, but from what I saw, he'll be on the second line at even strength in the number 1 power play. He has been priced, but you can see from the Vegas odds here, pretty low implied team total. Anything worth targeting for you on the Philly side of the ice?
I mean, you could take shots on Brink, but I just don't know how many minutes he'll realistically play. Obviously, it'd be fun to just more watch him, I think, than roster him. I've been betting the Kevin Hayes over 2.5 shot on goal shot prop for like 5 straight games, and it keeps hitting. So I bet it again tonight.
I kid you not. It's so funny you say that. Like 3 or 4 slates in a row, I have wanted to write him up on scores and odds and then have just kind of forgotten. And the other night he cleared it in the first period. And I'm like, I'm just leaving money on the table here.
I've been putting it into our premium package every day and it keeps hitting. And I did it again today. It's like he keeps hitting in the first or second period. I don't know how that, is going to help us in DFS. I wouldn't necessarily roster him in DFS, but I think he is worthy for that shot prop bet. So it's really just Washington. It's really just Washington power play stack for me. I think Carlson's a little overpriced, but guys like, Backstrom, Oshie, they're very, very affordable. So I think that you can play them anywhere, whether it be single entry, GPPs, anything. If they're going to be lower owned, I would try to get overweight on them because Philly's special teams is quite horrible. So and I think that we've seen that they're just feeding Ovi. They just want him to score that empty netter. They want him to score on the power play. I mean, it's going to be tough to play him with like Toronto, but I'd rather play Ovi than Mitch Marner. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Ovechkin's clearly the priority there. Carlson's an interesting one because he's been really bad. I think the last time I was on the show, I even talked with Boggs about how he's had a really significant drop off. And then since then, he's actually been really good. I mean, there was a slate a week or so ago against I think it was the Lightning, where he had like 2 goals and 2 assists. And if you didn't have them, you could just log off. So it seems to be a little bit of a hearkening back to his prior form when he was a Norris winner. Like you said, I think he's 68 on DraftKings. That is a lot to pay. But if you wanted to go a little contrarian and pay for, even just a 2-man stack of Ovechkin Carlson for a little power play mini stack, I think you could do worse. And to your point,
they certainly have the ceiling that we talk about on a slate like this. I mean, they absolutely have that explosive ceiling that we need on a 14-game slate.
Right.
I did forget to mention for Philly though, I do like Owen Tippett quite a bit. As part of just a cheap filler piece. Owen Tippett and like JVR are a cheap little 2-man.
Yeah, that's a good call. I mean, you can throw them in as individual punt plays or 2-mans. Last thing, I mean, just hammering home the point on ownership. If we expect the Capitals to be way under some of these other favorites like the Flames, the Maple Leafs, whoever else, then absolutely go way over them. You could make that your stand. Yeah, I mean, Ovechkin's not going to be 5%, but if he's 10% and someone like Marner, like you mentioned, or Matthews or other are going to be triple that, I do really love going overweight on the Caps tonight.
I just love the pivot away from Marner for $100 more. I mean, they're with $100 of each other. So I'll take Ovi all day.
Yep, absolutely. All right, moving on, we have the Penguins taking on the Islanders. This is another one, I mean, similar to the game before when we were talking about the Rangers and Hurricanes. You've got 2 pretty good teams. You've got the Islanders at home who can kind of muck it up and make it a defensive game. biggest news here, and arguably some of the biggest of the slate, is that Evgeny Malkins will be out for, I think I saw it was 4 games due to suspension. Yep. Did that feel right to you, by the way?
I think it was fair. I mean, it's not. I didn't think it was the worst decision.
Yeah, that's where I was at. Actually, I thought I had seen something yesterday with 2, but I guess people were speculating, and that struck me as too few. And I was thinking more the 3 to 5 range. And so when it came out today, I was like, all right, that it felt worse than Matthews, who just got 2.
It was definitely worse than Matthews. I thought.
Yeah. So I mean, the Pittsburgh fans were out there whining like they always do, but as a Preds fan, I'll forever hate the Penguins. So I'm allowed. They ruined our one chance lately at a Stanley Cup. So, anyways, it looks like Evan Rodriguez is likely going to fill in on the power play. I did check that this morning. It looks like he and Raquel sort of rotated. My guess would be they give Rodriguez the first crack or 2. If it doesn't go well, maybe they move Raquel in there. Is that enough for you to like someone like Rodriguez? Do you like the first line here for Pittsburgh? What kind of stands out for you?
Nothing really stands out to me. Pittsburgh is a little too cheap. I think the Islanders get by on some lucky goaltending a lot because a lot of their advanced metrics defensively, they should be giving up a lot more goals than they do. I bet the Penguins today to win just on the money line. But that's really going to be just my exposure to this game. Like, I don't really like this game from a fantasy perspective. I don't see there being a ton of goals. I don't see Pittsburgh 1 really, exploding enough to win you a GPP.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, if this was a 5-game slate, we'd probably have to hold our nose and pick pieces here. But
that's exactly right. Like, Brian Rust on a 5-game slate at 5,900 sounds great. Right. But not on a 14-game slate. So I'm just, I think I'll pass. I mean, Chris Letang, 6,100 again. It sounds okay, but I'm not there.
Yeah. What about the Islanders? Anything there?
I have absolutely no interest in the Islanders. I mean, I feel like they are what I call a random team. Like any one of these guys could pop off, but I really couldn't tell you who. Yep. The Penguins have been, better than I expected they were going to be defensively this year. And, I just don't see who I could really realistically play.
Yeah, the one name, and I'm going to throw up as I say this, I don't even like it as it's coming out of my mouth, but I did play him as a one-off the other night and he scored, but JG Pajot is like,
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, he's 3K. He is on the number 1 power play. He's going to get you. You talked about random. He's going to be out there if they're up. He's going to get that empty netter to save your, you think, oh, why did I play him? He has 1 shot on goal in the 3rd period, and then he gets an empty netter and ends with 11.5. And you're like, all right, I'm safe. So
for me, if he weren't a center, I'd have a lot more interest. I just hate giving up my center spot. But I don't think he's bad. Yeah. If that makes sense. I think he's decent for that price. I just hate giving up a center spot.
Right. Because obviously if people are locking in some of, either Matthews or Barkov or whoever, you're right. Then you're left with 1 center spot, unless you want to go triple center with a util. So I agree. I wouldn't go crazy. He's the only kind of one-off that I would even consider for that game. All right, moving on. We have another ugly game, but probably some more fantasy appeal than the others. We have the Senators taking on Detroit. It seems like every time I'm on this show, Detroit is facing another bad team, making them actually somewhat viable for fantasy. So we've got the Red Wings are a 120 favorite, meaning it's essentially a pick 'em here with a 6.5 total. So, on the higher end for this slate. Talk to me about Ottawa.
Yeah, for me, my favorite, it's just a little 2-man of Josh Norris and Brady Tkachuk. Tkachuk's price, I think, fell like $600 from his last game or something like that. I think he's only 6,300, which is, I mean, with his shot floor is way, way too cheap. I mean, he has a huge ceiling, which we saw in his last game. Even without that ridiculous baseball goal, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, even without that, he was a complete monster. So I don't want to get too crazy with this game, but I think that if you want to take that little 2-man of Norris Kachuk, maybe some fillers out of the power play, but really, I like this game, but I don't love it.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, my note here, it's tough to correlate a whole lot with Ottawa just because their power play does span 3 different lines, and they have 3 centers with Stützle, Norris, and White. It is tough. I think the 2-man that you mentioned makes the most sense because they are in the same line and both on the power play. The other name I'll mention, and I've been playing him a lot, and it's been kind of meh overall, is Eric Branstrom. He hasn't quite filled in, like they would like necessarily, but he's still getting the usage. He's on the power play 1. I think he's 3,100 right now. He's in my build just as a one-off to have a punt D-man. So I think you could do worse there in a game where there will.
I've had it with him. I can't get anything out of him. I rostered him so much. I feel like last month when Shabbat went down, he just never got more than like 6.
That's what he's been doing lately. So my expert survey hot take was that he scores his first goal of the season. So we'll see if that comes to play. But yeah, it has been pretty bleak. I've been punting D-man a lot. If he gets me, 2 block shots and 3 shots on goal or something,
yeah,
I'll
you
probably
take
be
that.
happy.
You take that at 3,100, especially in single entry.
Right. So
yeah.
What about Detroit?
So it's just Detroit 1 or bust for me. I mean, this first line is really, really good, and they have tremendous ceiling. I don't think they're going to be that high owned. I think they're a really, really good GPP team, and they're priced kind of in that mid range where we often discuss kind of a more stars and scrubs type build in hockey, where we want to go up to a Matthews, then we want to find like a $2,500 guy, and it leaves out this mid-range. And so on this huge slate, I think that they're going to be very much forgotten. That being said, they've been pretty bad this year. So
yeah, I think I'm about over. I mean, the way that you're kind of done with Branstrom, I'm in the same boat where I keep playing them in these good matchups. And I think I mentioned it on the show with Boggs a few weeks ago. They just haven't shown quite the upside that I have wanted. I mean, they'll score, but neither of them will assist on a random D-man will assist on Larkin's goal and then the other. So I think they're worth being in the GPP pool.
I will say this: if they're gonna be like 5%, and if I was making a lot of lineups, I think I'd still go
company to be really highly owned. Where will you land on the Edmonton ownership? Are you still going to be targeting McDavid? What do you
I want to be able to target McDavid, and if I for whatever reason feel like gambling and fading Matthews in single entry, I'm going to McDavid. McDavid's, I mean, his shot rates this last 10 days or so are unbelievable. I mean, it's like sometimes I get really frustrated rostering McDavid because he doesn't shoot. Like he'll have like a wide open breakaway and then he'll pass it off to like Kane, and Kane might finish it or he might not. But either way, it's not McDavid shooting the puck. And lately, he's been the guy shooting the puck. And that's just added to his tremendous floor ceiling combination. I don't know who's a better hockey player between he and Matthews, but it's close, and even though Matthews has probably had the better offensive year, but McDavid's unbelievable. So it's just that tonight Matthews has such a better matchup. But if you're looking to make a bold stand and say, you know what, I'm just going to fade Toronto, I'm going to just go nuts. And then you decide you're going to go some Florida and some Edmonton instead. I mean, that's a really high leverage thing that you could do tonight.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. What I hate a little bit, and I won't claim to be a hockey expert as far as the X's and O's, but it does seem like to be that Minnesota does match up pretty well with Edmonton as far as they've got 3 lines that they can roll out and play matchups and things, and especially with them being at home. It'll be interesting to see how they do play some of those with McDavid line and the Draisaitl line, but it's worth it. I mean, they can have the matchups all day. It doesn't matter when you've got arguably the best player. I mean, to your point, I think McDavid maybe slightly overall, slight nod, goal scoring alone, maybe Matthews. But I agree. If McDavid is truly going to be under 10%, which is I think what lineup HQ had him at, and Matthews is going to be 30, then you have to just suck it up and say, all right, I'm going to go overweight on McDavid and hope that Matthews has a goal and an assist and McDavid goes off for 3 or 4 points. I mean, I don't see a scenario where Matthews doesn't do something, but if he doesn't have that massive game, then you could leap over the field.
If Matthews gets 20 at 25% owned, that's not going to be enough.
Yep.
So he could hypothetically give you 4 shots, a goal, and a block or whatever, which is an okay game.
Right.
It's not going to be enough at 9,800 at 25%. So, this is kind of like this is your leverage piece right here are the Oilers.
Yep.
And I don't think McDavid's going to even get to 10%, really. If I had to bet on ownership in like a large field GPP or in a single entry, I don't think he'll get to 10%.
Yeah, which is wild. I mean, that really should never be the case, but I do think you're right. What about on the Wild sides? I mean, they are favorites here, which means their goal total is fairly significant. What do you like on the Wild side?
I think Matt Boldy is going to be kind of a popular salary relief play, second line for first power play. Edmonton struggles on the penalty kill. He'll get his chances. He skates with Kevin Fiala at even strength. Fiala is a really good play too. That's a really nice little even strength 2-man. In a game where I think there's going to be a lot of goals scored. So Kaprizov is going to be like the kind of like the quote, priority spend from the Wild. And if you want to play him, then that's fine. I don't think the way that I am going to construct my teams, I don't think I'm going to get there. I'd rather get to these cheaper pieces of the Wild. Jared Spurgeon, 4,300 power play 1. I think he's a fantastic play. I think most likely I'm going to play Jacob Middleton, 2,900. Maybe I'm a little biased because he's the reason why I won the 333 a couple days ago at 21 DK points or whatever. But, he's got good peripherals. So, and he's going to probably play on that top pair. So this is a good shot block game. So I think he's worth a punt.
Yeah, I was going to mention Spurgeon as well. I think Matt Dumba is going to be out. It's just a slight boost. Spurgeon's, from what I've seen, he's on the power play no matter what, but occasionally they'll throw Dumba out there, and it may just mean an extra shift or two for Spurgeon. So I'm with you there. Middleton, same thing. So I think we're largely in alignment there. I'm probably a little higher on Kaprizov. He's been so good. I mean, I looked the other day, he's up to 90 points on the year. If his ownership, I actually haven't looked at and seen what his ownership is, but same thing. If you're playing someone, I know we've hammered it home, but instead of Marner, someone like that, or Ovechkin, like I think you could go one off Kaprizov and he can have 6, 7, 8 shots on goal and score and easily outscore someone like a Marner.
And of course, this whole line, like Hartman and Zuccarello, I mean, I think they all correlate on the first power play too. I mean, that's a really, really good line right there. I'd rather play Kaprizov as a full stack. That's just me though. That's just me.
Yeah, no, I've been hammering the Hartman Kaprizov just kind of mini stack. I've been leaving off Zuccarello because he seems to have some kind of low floor, low ceiling kind of games. But absolutely, I mean, you could stack up all three, and it seems like every time I look at their box score, that group has combined for at least a few goals. All right, moving on. We've got my Nashville Predators hosting the Sharks. Preds are -210 favorite with a 5.5 over under. So not a whole lot expected from Vegas on the San Jose side. Do you agree with that?
I certainly agree with what Vegas is trying to say with that game. Doesn't mean that I don't like a couple pieces maybe from the Shark side, because I'm always a fan of Timo Meier. I mean, I feel really bad that he's on this terrible team, because if he was imagine the year he'd have if he had anybody around him. He has been just lights out this year. Erik Karlsson, 4,200. I don't know. I mean, that's the price is getting low enough where you might want to maybe take a shot. Nashville struggles on special teams, so this could be an interesting contrarian spot to kind of attack that, with the Sharks power play one. Again, just if this were a smaller slate, I definitely would do that. If this were a 5 or 6 game slate, I would be attacking more Sharks here, definitely. But I just don't know. Saros is such a good goalie. I think he's a top maybe 4 goalie in all of hockey. So that's my only issue with it, is that I don't think that they're going to have quite the ceiling to win you a GPP.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, I just pulled up their live or their implied total, and it looks like the Sharks have the 4th lowest on the slate at 2.5 goals. So
yeah, that's not going to cut it.
Yeah. So to your point, could someone like a Timo Meier have 6 shots on goal and score? And maybe it's tough for me, and I'll admit my Preds bias coming in here. I think the Sharks will largely be a scratch off. I didn't see Carlson's price. That is intriguing at 42, but I think I'll largely stay away.
Meyer's another guy like Kaprizov or Ovi over Marner. I mean, it's that same kind of range where it's like that's going to be a juicy kind of like one-off spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. On the Nashville side, so they have mixed up their top line lately, and honestly, that's interesting to me because that's been their bread and butter all year with Johansson, Forsberg, and Duchesne. They've decided to break them up and put Tomasino up there. Yeah, honestly, I don't know how I feel from either a fantasy or a Preds perspective. I think they wanted a little bit more balance and give Granlund some help on that second line. But what do you like? I mean, do you still like that top line? Are you going power play?
I think these lines are a mess, and I'm not really sure what to do with them. And I'm just going to take the stand that I hope they don't burn me. That's really the kind of the bottom line. If you build a team that you love and you happen to have tons of money left over, obviously you can play Roman Josi. I mean, he's the best offensive defenseman that we have. 8,800, I think, is actually kind of a fair price. This game does not thrill me. So I think, honestly, even if I was making 20 teams, I'd probably, other than Timo Meier and maybe Carlson, I think I'd stay away from Nashville.
Yeah, I agree.
And that doesn't mean that I want the Sharks goalie, but I think that, Nashville scores 3 or 4 goals, gets the win, but it's kind of spread out. Not one specific line that I want.
Yeah, I agree. Even as a Preds fan, I don't think I can move them up to anything other than a low exposure.
I want to play Forsberg, but I just don't think I'm going to get to that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, let's move on to what I would call somewhat of an ugly game. We've got the Kings and Blackhawks, 5.5 total again. Kings are between 140 and 150 favorites. Let's start with the visiting Kings. In my notes, I have hard to get too excited. What sell me on the Kings here?
See, the LA one's my favorite kind of lower owned stack today. I mean, they're going to have some ownership, but I mean, they need to win this game. They've lost 3 in a row. I mean, they're kind of hanging on to that West Conference playoff hunt. They need 2 points tonight. The Hawks have lost 7 in a row, I think. I bet the Kings at minus 150. This LA one, they play over 20 minutes a night. I mean, and they fully correlate on the top power play unit. Adrian Kempe, I bet his over 2.5 shot prop. I mean, he's shooting 5 times a night on goal, shots on goal, like 5, 7 in his last 3, I think. I'm going to try to get this line, and Leafs is really going to be where I'm at tonight. That's my first instinct.
Yeah, Kempe is the guy that I actually had highlighted. And I think the difference between he and some of the other, my problem with Kopitar and Iafallo on the first line is they don't have the shots on goal upside, at least lately, because Kempe's, cannibalizing and taking so much of that out. And Arvidsson's the same on the second line, where he seems to have 80% of the production. Trevor Moore and Deneau are there and he's shooting it all. I hate that he's not on the top power play right now. So I think you're a little higher than I am overall, but I agree. I think that Kempe, just due to the shots on goal volume, I think he's around 5K. He would be my priority. Yeah, if you want to throw him in with Kopitar.
And I really like that Sean Durzee's under 5K. I mean, this is a matchup type of game. He could get the blocks, he could get the shots, the assists. I think he could have a massive, massive game.
Yep. What about Chicago?
Chicago, I have basically no interest in. I mean, they're still running out these guys top, for that Kane line top. They're playing top minutes, but they're just not. They're not for me today. They're just not gonna. They're not gonna do it for me. I think a guy like the Brinket's just too expensive. I mean, you can always play Patrick Kane, but I think this just isn't the slate for it.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I've been riding that Strome to Brinket Kane probably more often than I should this year. And they finally did break them up. And now Taze is with Kane like they were many, many years ago. Strome's with the Brinket. But yeah, they've been bad. At some point, they'll probably mix things up even more, try to give young guys a shot in a lost season. So I agree. The Kings are okay defensively enough to where I can largely scratch off the Blackhawks. Speaking of scratch off, we have the Kraken taking on the Flames. Sell me on a single Seattle player. I dare you.
Oh man, that's going to be tough. I mean, I guess it would have to be Ryan Donato. He's cheap enough. He loves to shoot the puck. He's 2,700. But I think that's really about it. I play Jared McCann a lot, but I'm not going to tonight. Shorter slate. He's usually in the low fours. I kind of do like his play, but not tonight. Really, maybe Adam Larson. Maybe.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Oof. Yeah, you're digging deep. I was if I had to choose one, maybe Vince Dunn, but man,
yeah, maybe
slim.
I was hoping Larson was going to be like 28, but like 3K might be too much of a stretch.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on. Enough with the Kraken. Which man, when they drafted their team, or they selected their team, if you will, everyone kind of said on paper this looks terrible, and people had said that with Vegas, and then it turned out great. Yeah. We were right on the Kraken. I mean, they were absolutely as bad as it looked.
Bad. They're bad.
Yeah,
they're bad.
So, all right. Well, Calgary clearly on the other side of it, much more favorable. Got the top line of Gaudreau, Lindholm, Tkachuk. They had separated them for a little while and put Toffoli. I think it's probably the right call to put them back together. Yeah. They're going to be a top play, probably fairly highly owned. One, I'm assuming you like them. And then is there anything else that stands out on Calgary?
I do like them. I'm just going to say what I always say about Calgary is that they're such a deep team that they have got three lines that can score. So if you're going to spend, around 22,000 for like a top line, the Kraken are bad. We make fun of them, but I think they do a good job of limiting high danger attempts. So that's like the one good thing that they're good at. So yes, you can play Calgary, but if I was making a lot of teams tonight, I wouldn't get too crazy with this team at all. Because would it really shock me if it was the second line that scored 3 goals? Would it shock me if it was even the third line? It wouldn't. So Calgary's like my favorite team to get to the Stanley Cup. They're not my favorite team to play in fantasy. So that's just, sometimes that take burns me and sometimes it doesn't. So take that for however you want, but they're not my favorite type of team to play in DFS.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That was the note that I had, that they can roll out three lines and on a night like tonight where they should be up, I think they will. And they're not going to throw that top line out for 20 minutes. They may get up early and say, all right, let's just roll out these three lines evenly, give everyone 15 to 17 minutes and call it. So I agree. I mean, the team total would lead you to believe that they're a top play, and I'm not going to steer you away, but I think we're both a little under what the industry might be, especially for people that are primarily looking at Vegas lines.
And I wouldn't play, like, I'm a big fan of Markstrom, but I would not play him tonight because I just don't think he's going to get any volume. So, I mean, he might get 20 saves and give up a goal, get the win, but that's not going to be enough at his price point.
Yep. All right. I think we got 3 games remaining here. Let's start with the Lightning taking on the Stars. Lightning are a -155 favorite, 6 goal total. I'm actually a little surprised. I thought this one may be 5.5, but I think that's a little bit more respect to the offenses than I might have given them. Talk me through the Lightning. I know they've kind of mixed up their lines a little bit over the last week or two. Anything you like there?
I mean, I'm right there with you that I thought that this total was a little high. Like, I definitely thought this would be like a 5.5 total. You know, I don't have a ton of interest in this Tampa Bay side. Palat's price on that top line for 3,500 is okay, but I'm not a big Palat guy. Like a guy like Victor Hedman, 7,100 in this matchup, I think is just too expensive.
Yep.
So I don't think I can get there. I mean, I think that these guys for Tampa Bay are just too expensive, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think after this, I'm going to have to go right up the under on this game on scores and odds. Because
I was thinking that same thing.
It just feels like a 3-2 one way or another. You're going to need all the goals to come from one of these lines. With the Lightning, they've got Stamkos on a different line.
This is a big game for Dallas too. I mean, they're hanging on. I mean, they're essentially playing playoff hockey right now. I mean, this is going to be a tight checking game for them. They're not gonna lay down just because they're playing the Lightning. This is a big game for them.
Is that enough for you?
I have a lot more interest in the Dallas side of this game, just as a contrarian piece. I always love this Dallas 1 line. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a horrible spot for them. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this is about as bad as it gets, but they're all under 6K. It's a big game for them. This could be like a super contrarian piece. You know, Pavelski is like 5,400. He's cheap enough that I think you could one-off him.
Yeah, I saw a stat. I wish I could give credit to who it was. Someone tweeted the other day that popped on my feed that X percentage of the goals, some crazy high amount, has come from Hintz, Robertson, and Pavelski. I mean, it's just like a ridiculous amount.
I read that same one, and it's huge percentage.
Right. Which is, I mean, that's what we want for fantasy. I mean, we were talking that this could be a 3-2 game, but if the Stars win 3-2 and all 3 come from that line, then that could be, you know, enough to vault you up a GPP. So I'm with you. Despite being an underdog in this, I have more interest in the Stars. It's tough against the Lightning. I mean, they're a good team. They have a great goaltending, but they're not going to shut them out. So if you do get those 2 or 3 goals, it could be a good night.
And their goaltending, I think, hasn't been as good as it has been. You know, I mean, they're still outstanding, but not as good.
Yep. All right. We've got the Golden Knights taking on Vancouver. I need to see the latest, but what I'm showing is that Mark Stone might be back tonight. Right now, it looks like he's on the 3rd line. It depends, I guess, what you call the 3rd line, but Eichel, Pacioretty, Stone, it seems like they haven't been in the lineup together hardly at all this year. They're finally back. Is it enough to have you target anything on Vegas?
Yeah, I keep talking about these must-win games, but I mean, this is the Knights are going to be highly motivated to just crush this Canucks team. So this is a game that I'm actually struggling with in my, single entry cash game type build, because I do want a night, on my team. I don't know kind of exactly which one that I want, but I really thought about betting the over in this game. I think it's 6.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great GPP game. Let me just say that this game. The Knights have a ceiling. It's late at night. It's gonna get lost in the shuffle, kind of. I think amongst all the Toronto, Florida, Edmonton, Minnesota. This game is gonna get lost in that shuffle. So this game has, I think, a lot of plays that you could play on both sides.
Yeah. I'm with you. What's funny, I agree. I probably have the least sense of where this game is going. In my kind of template build last night, when I was just throwing something in there to reserve contest, I actually had Demko as like the goalie to put in there first as like a GPP goalie, which I don't think is crazy either, because absolutely the Knights could put 40 shots on goal and only score 2 of them. Now, I didn't know that Stone was potentially going to be back, so they have more of their weapons available. But I agree. I think you can go a lot of different ways. I'm a little more inclined to target the Vancouver side. They've had some pieces come out, which seems to have actually helped them, with Besser and Pearson have been out lately. And honestly, I think that saved Elias Pettersson's like confidence and form. He seems to have really responded with a greater role and is playing his usual minutes. And on the power play, he and Bo Horvat, I think, are very intriguing. Real quick on the second line, Alex Chasson has been revived from the dead and is somehow playing a bunch of minutes again and doing his usual thing in the power play. He and JT Miller. I think Vancouver, of all the stacks for me tonight, they're the one that's going to be 1 or 2% that I have some interest in, just given the recent play.
And normally I hate Quinn Hughes because he doesn't shoot the puck and he's too expensive. He's like 5,400. But now he's 4,200. So I think that that's actually a pretty decent price tag for him. So if you like Vancouver, just don't forget about him, because his price is dropping, and I think his price is actually fair now.
Yeah, and the good news with the top 6 for Vancouver, I think other than JT Miller, they're all relatively affordable. So if you did want to pair them with some of the expensive options, you can throw in some value pieces like Chasson, or, I don't think Horvat's out of control. I don't think Peterson's price is too high. So they're kind of in that mid-range that we talked about before with Detroit, where they can often get overlooked for the people wanting to go the Stars and Scrubs route.
And did we mention Connor Garland?
No, I did. I left him. I mean, I just mentioned top 6, but I think he's definitely worth mentioning.
Yeah. I think he's definitely. I think he might be on the first line.
He is. Yeah, he's with Horvat and Pettersson.
Yeah,
and I don't want to pronounce Miller and Chasson. I don't want to pronounce the other guy with the really long name. But
Bobrovsky.
He is in play, and I think he's in play. I actually played him the other night. Not a ton of upside, but at 2,500, I mean, he could be a fill-in.
Yeah, no, this game has got a lot of good pieces at a lot of different price ranges too.
Yep. All right. Last game. We've made it. We've got a little bit of a stinker. We've got the Devils taking on the Coyotes in Arizona. Devils are minus 145 favorites with the 6.5 over under. Devils side, I have said in the past, I struggle with this team about as much as any. I think I probably undervalue them a lot. Tonight's really not that different for me. Yes, they have a pretty high team total. Sell me on the Devils here.
So this is the game that I have a lot of interest in if I'm trying to jam in as many studs as I can. If I'm trying to maybe do a lineup with Matthews and McDavid, or Matthews, Marner, and another kind of 6K type piece. There are plays on both sides that are really, really strong. Dawson Mercer for 3,200, first power play, second line. I think, he correlates with Pavel Zacha, who I'm not a big Zacha fan, but again, first power play unit. He correlates with Mercer. So I think that he's very, very viable. I think that's a very, very cheap 2-man. I'm not crazy about kind of the more expensive Devils. Like I wouldn't play like Dougie Hamilton or Jesper Bratt, as good as the spot as this might be. I want to go for the cheaper pieces, like, as gross as it is, like Nick Ritchie on Arizona,
Yep. He's in my draft build right now, and I hate it, but it's like, I mean, he's getting power play 1, he's min price, like, to your point, like
these are great, like mix and match type pieces if you're multi-entering. So like you could do like Nick Ritchie, Cam Dineen, who I've been playing a lot, who hasn't had a big huge game, but he's been consistent. 2,800. Phil Kessel, 3,300 first power play unit. I think there's a ton of cheap value in this game. I know that when people look at this game, they'll want to cross it off, and I don't blame them, but tonight's a good night to get exposure to this game.
Yeah. I mean, I think the 6.5 total absolutely paints that picture. You talked about Richie. I think the Devils defense has been really bad. I mean, every time I look up, they're giving up 5, 6, 7 goals. Let me see here. Yeah, it looks like 7 or more goals in 3 of their last 6 games. So that's like a season's worth for some of the good defensive teams. So
that Tatar, Mercer, Zaka, Tatar doesn't get power play 1, but I mean, that's an unbelievably cheap line.
Yeah. I mean, these are like a blender we'll call vomit stacks in
right. But I don't even
MLB.
necessarily want to vomit, like
I kind of do, but I may just swallow it down and say, all right.
It's such a good spot. That's the thing, it's a vomit stack, but it's against like the worst pitcher in baseball,
Fair. Yeah. I mean, it's viable for sure. So, all right. Anything else you want to add as far as the slate as a whole? I know we kind of talked about goalies as we went throughout. I mean, anything else you want to add on the slate?
No, I think I'm good.
Awesome. All right, everyone. We appreciate it, and good luck tonight.